Criminal Case 865-14, People of the Philippines versus Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton. The accused is in court, Your Honor.
In front of the appearance as private prosecutors and the Director of Supervision with Attorney Virgie Suarez.
Same appearance for Pemberton, Your Honor, and Attorney Rowena Flores, together with Attorney Benjamin Toloso Jr. and Attorney Filimon de la Pina.
Yes.
Criminal case number 865-14, People of the Philippines plaintiff versus Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton, accused for murder. Decision, Roman numeral number 1, the charge. Accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton, a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, was charged with murder by the Olongapo City Prosecutor's Office in an information filed on December 15, 2014, the accusatory portion of which reads, that on or about the 11th day of October 2014, in the city of Olongapo, Philippines, and within the jurisdiction of this honorable court, the above-named accused, being a trained and active serviceman of the United States Marine Corps and a skilled boxer with intent to kill and by means of treachery, with abuse and taking advantage of superior strength, did then and there knowingly, unlawfully, and feloniously attack, assault, box, beat up, strangle, and choke from behind the victim, Jeffrey Sardoncillo E. Laude, alias Jennifer, a transgender, until she stopped moving, inflicting upon her the following: head and neck, number 1, scalp hematoma, frontal region, 1 by 1 cm, 3 cm right of anterior midline. Number 2, scalp hematoma, left temporal region, measuring 2.5 by 1.5 cm from the anterior midline. Number 3, subconjunctival hemorrhage, right eye. Number 4, subconjunctival hemorrhage, left eye. Number 5, hematoma, periorbital region, 1.8 by 0.5 cm, 2 cm from anterior midline. Number 6, contusion, right zygomatic region, 6 by 5 cm from anterior midline. Number 7, left zygomatic region, 12.5 cm, 1 cm, 6.2 cm from the anterior midline. Number 8, multiple abrasions, perioral region. Number 9, hematoma, left periorbital region, 1.5 by 1 cm. Number 10, hematoma, buccal side of the upper lip, 0.8 by 0.5 cm. Number 11, abrasions, bite marks, tip of the tongue. Number 12, contusion, lower lip region, 1 by 0.5 cm. Chest and abdomen. Number 13, grossly unremarkable esophagus and trachea. Number 14, contused external portion of the right horn of the larynx. Number 15, hematoma, upper inner portions of the larynx. Number 16, enlarged right and left lungs. Number 17, pressure mark, suprasternal notch region, 1 by 0.5 cm. Number 18, pressure mark, right clavicular region, 1 by 0.5 cm. Number 19, multiple abrasions, right lumbar region. Number 20, multiple abrasions, left gluteal region. Number 21, grossly unremarkable internal organs, including the brain. Extremities. Number 22, contusion on the right palm, 0.8 by 0.5 cm. Number 23, linear abrasion, middle third of the left forearm. 3 by 0.4 cm. Number 24, abrasion middle third of the left forearm, 0.6 by 0.5 cm. Number 25, abrasion middle third of the left forearm, measuring 0.3 by 0.3 cm. Number 26, multiple abrasions, middle third of right leg, 5.5 by 2 cm. And with cruelty by deliberately and inhumanly augmenting the suffering of said Jeffrey Sardansulio E. Laude, alias Jennifer, that after having strangled and choked said Jeffrey Sardansulio Laude, alias Jennifer, until she stopped moving, drag her into the bathroom, slump her head over the rim of the toilet, repeatedly push down and dunk her head inside the toilet bowl, and drown her, which directly caused her death by asphyxia due to drowning and strangulation. All contrary to law and with the qualifying aggravating circumstances of treachery, taking advantage of superior strength and cruelty, contrary to law, close quotation. Accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton is a citizen of the United States of America and a member of the U.S. Marine Corps. On October 11, 2014, Pemberton was in Subic Bay, Olongapo City, Philippines, on board HSB Westpac Express as part of the regular military exercises between the governments of the United States of America and the Republic of the Philippines. Pursuant to the Visiting Forces Agreement entered into on February 10, 1998, between the Republic of the Philippines and the United States of America, particularly Article 5, Section 1A, it is the Philippine authorities which shall have jurisdiction over Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton with respect to the crime of murder for which he is charged. The information for murder was filed on December 15, 2014, before the Regional Trial Court, Olongapo City, Zambales. The case was referred to Regional Trial Court Branch 74, Olongapo City, Zambales, on the same day, December 15, 2014. A warrant of arrest was issued on December 16, 2014, against the accused. On December 19, 2014, Lance Corporal Pemberton appeared before the court to submit himself under its jurisdiction. Lance Corporal Pemberton is presently detained at Camp Aguinaldo, pursuant to both countries' treaty commitments under the agreement between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the government of the United States of America regarding the treatment of United States Armed Forces visiting the Philippines, particularly Article 5, Section 6, until completion of all judicial proceedings. In accordance thereto, Lance Corporal Pemberton was committed on December 19, 2014 at the Mutual Defense Board Security Engagement Board Facility, Jusma Compound, Camp Aguinaldo, Quezon City, Philippines, pending the judicial proceedings. The United States government faithfully complied with its undertaking to bring accused Lance Corporal Pemberton to the trial court every time his presence was required. When arraigned, accused, assisted by his counsel, refused to plead. Thus, a plea of not guilty was entered for him. During pre-trial, the parties stipulated and thus dispensed proof on the following. Number 1, the identity of the accused as the same person charged and arraigned in the information. Number 2, the body of the victim was found at room number 1, Zelson Lodge, Magsaysay Drive, Olongapo City. Number 3, Zelson Lodge and Ambience Nightlife are both located along Ramon Magsaysay Drive, Barangay East, Tapinac, Olongapo City. Number 4, on October 11, 2014, accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton was at the Subic Bay Freeport Zone. Number 5, on 11 October 2014, accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton was assigned at the HSB Westpac Express. Number 6, an ocular inspection was conducted by the panel of prosecutors with the private prosecutors on 05 November 2014. Number 7, the front desk and room number 1 of the Selzon Lodge are both located at its second floor. Number 8, the US NCIS submitted a report of their investigation consisting of 3 volumes, a copy of which was furnished the counsel for accused. Number 9, accused was 19 years of age on October 11, 2014. And number 10, victim Jeffrey Laude was born male and was 26 years of age on 11 October 2014. Thereafter, the parties agreed to terminate the pre-trial. Thus, trial ensued. Roman numeral number 2, facts of the case. In August 2013, Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton joined the U.S. Marine Corps to help his family, to serve the military, as well as his country. On October 11, 2014, Pemberton was on board HSB Westpac Express in Subic Bay, Olongapo City, Philippines, as part of the regular military exercises between the governments of the United States of America and the Republic of the Philippines. Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton, together with Lance Corporal Jairen Michael Rose, Lance Corporal Bennett Eric Dahl, and Corporal Daniel Fabian Polido, were on liberty on October 11, 2014. Liberty means that the Marines have free time to do what they want. Liberty usually starts in the morning and ends at midnight. They left HSB Westpac Express at NSD Port, Subic Bay at about 3 p.m. and went to Harbor Point Mall inside Subic Bay Freeport Zone, where they did their individual shopping. They stayed in the mall until around 5:20 to 5:30 p.m. The Liberty bodies composed of Pemberton, Rose, Dahl, and Polido left the mall and went to Ramon Magsaysay Drive, Olongapo City to get a massage. They were there at the massage parlor for an hour. After they got the massage, they went bar hopping, but it was at Willis Bar where they stayed for about 3 hours. All the 4 Liberty bodies drank beer, liquor, and mixed drinks at Willis Bar, and they got drunk. They left Willis Bar at 10:30 p.m. and went bar hopping again. They only stayed about 5 minutes in the next bar. Then they went to Ambience Nightlife. The 4 Liberty bodies, Pemberton, Rose, Dahl, and Polido arrived at Ambience Nightlife at about 11 p.m. Rose and Polido met their respective partners at Ambience and went to a hotel and stayed there for about 20 minutes and had sex. Dahl stayed at Ambience Nightlife. In the night of October 11, 2014, Mark Clarence Galviro, aka Barbie, and his friends Gorgeous and Cherise arrived at Ambience Nightlife at 9 p.m., while Jamil and Jeffrey Laude, aka Jennifer Laude, arrived at 10 p.m. They are all sex workers and were looking for date customers that night. Galviro and Laude have long hair. Galviro was wearing pants, chaleco, and makeup, while Laude was dressed like a schoolgirl with plaid skirt, white blouse, knee-high socks, and high-heeled shoes on that night. Laude was carrying a bag and had money inside his bag amounting from 10,000 pesos to 20,000 pesos. At 10:55 p.m., 4 Americans who were later known as Liberty Bodies, Pemberton, Rose, Dahl, and Pulido, entered ambience, and Laude approached one of them, Pemberton, and offered sex. Laude and the American, Pemberton, agreed. After that, Laude approached Galvero and pulled him out of ambience together with Pemberton. Laude, Pemberton, and Galvero crossed the street and they went towards Selzon Lodge. They went straight to the counter and Laude paid for the room. They were given room number 1, located at the second floor of the lodge, and Laude, Pemberton, and Galvero entered room number 1. When they were inside room number 1, Laude asked Galvero to leave because Pemberton might discover that they were not really women because he has no breast while Laude has a silicone breast. Before Galvero left the room, he told Pemberton, "You saved my friend," which means to take care of his friend. And Pemberton replied, "Okay." Galvero later identified the American in a photo lineup as Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton. Galvero went out of room number 1 and proceeded to the ground floor of Selzon Lodge, where he met a Filipino guy. The guy asked him to go with him at room number 5, located at the 3rd floor of Selzon Lodge. Lance Corporal Pemberton and his Liberty Bodies arrived at Ambience Nightlife at 11 p.m. As he walked in, he was approached by 2 women. They came up to Pemberton and asked him, "Kinda pretty," bluntly, if he wanna fuck. Pemberton replied, "Yes, sure." Pemberton described the 2 women to be both pretty, with long hair. They were wearing dress and mini skirts. Both were clad in a revealing manner. These 2 women were later identified as Mark Lawrence Galvero, aka Barbie, and Jeffrey Laude, aka Jennifer Laude. Pemberton was excited as he had never been with 2 women before. He was drunk and he was horny. After Pemberton agreed to have sex with the 2 women, the 2 women dragged him to a motel, which turned out later on to be Selzon Lodge. He noticed that one of the women talked to the receptionist. However, he never saw an exchange of money. Pemberton, Laude, and Galvero were given room number 1 of Selzon Lodge, and they entered. As they walked in, both women turned to Pemberton and asked him for 1,000 pesos each. Pemberton obliged, and they gave them money they demanded. After Pemberton paid, one of the women stepped into the bathroom. The other one stayed with Pemberton. She took off her blouse, she pulled down Pemberton's pants, and gave him a head, or performed oral sex on him. The one who performed oral sex on Pemberton was Laude. The one who went to the bathroom was Galvero. Pemberton was standing up, and she was kneeling down. Pemberton was watching, and his hands are on Laude's head. Laude was jerking Pemberton up at the same time, but Pemberton did not ejaculate. He noticed that Laude has no jewelry on her hands. After a couple of minutes, Galvero came out of the toilet and the women switched places. Laude then stepped into the bathroom and Galvero performed oral sex on Pemberton. After a few minutes, Galvero got up and asked Pemberton for money so that she could get more condoms. Pemberton told her he has condoms, so Galvero does not need to do that. However, Galvero kept on insisting. While Pemberton kept on saying no, Galvero kept on reaching for Pemberton's pants and grabbed down his wallet. Pemberton took his wallet and he pulled out 200 pesos and gave it to Gelviro. After receiving the money, Gelviro left the room. When Gelviro left the room, Pemberton finished getting undressed. He was naked and he lay down on the bed. Pemberton had no jewelry. He was only wearing just a watch. Laude came out from the bathroom with a towel around her waist. Laude then started kissing his neck and chest. Laude laid over Pemberton sideways and gave Pemberton oral sex for the second time. Laude continued for a few minutes. After a few minutes, Pemberton went out to reach her vagina. Pemberton did not know, but he felt something weird. Pemberton felt Laude jerked away, her lower body and her legs. Pemberton felt something that was not supposed to be there. Pemberton told Laude to get off from him because he figured that Laude was a dude on top of him. Pemberton pushed Laude to stop the oral sex being performed on him. After Pemberton pushed Laude off him, Pemberton moved to the edge of the bed. Then Laude stood up and slapped Pemberton on his face. Laude slapped Pemberton so hard that Pemberton's ear rang. After Laude slapped Pemberton the first time, Pemberton could already see that Laude is winding up to slap him again. So Pemberton hit him first. Pemberton and Laude started fighting after that, and everything happened quickly. Pemberton got his arm around Laude and they fell back on the bed. Pemberton just held Laude there until he realized that he was not moving. Once Pemberton saw that Laude was not moving, he brought him to the bathroom. Pemberton wanted to wake Laude up by using the water from the shower. However, the shower was not working. Pemberton noticed that Laude's chest was still rising and falling, and he was still breathing. Pemberton left Laude inside the bathroom. Laude was then naked and was not covered by a blanket or towel. Laude was not clutching a necklace or any piece of jewelry in his hand when Pemberton left him. On October 11, 2014 at 10:55 p.m., Elias A. Galiamos Jr., front desk attendant, cashier, receptionist, bellboy of Selson Lodge, Magsaysay Drive, Olongapo City, attended to two bakla, gay persons named Jeffrey Laude, aka Jennifer Laude, Mark Clarence Gelviro, aka Barbie, and Joseph Scott Pemberton. They were looking for a room, and he gave them room number 1. Galiamos went back to the receiving area and attended the other customers. A few minutes after, Gelviro went out of the room, left, and later went up to room number 5, third floor of Selson Lodge, with a Filipino guy. At 11:30 p.m., Galiamos saw Pemberton went out of room number 1 and went downstairs. The door was slightly opened, so Galiamos peeped inside the room. The door of the toilet inside room number 1 was closed, and he saw a pair of sandals at the left side of the toilet's door. He thought there was somebody taking a shower inside the toilet, so he closed the door. Nobody came out of room number 1, so he decided to knock at the door, but nobody replied. He entered the room, asked the person inside the toilet, "Okay ka na? Are you done?" But nobody answered. He then opened the toilet's door and he saw Laude na nakangudngud sa inodoro, slumped into the toilet bowl, while his body, hands, and legs were straight on the floor. He did not touch Laude nor gave him a CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, because he was scared. Galliamos informed Jacinto Miraflor what he saw inside room number 1 before he went up to room number 5. He informed Gelviro, who was at room number 5, third floor of Celson Lodge, what happened to his friend Laude. He said, your friend fainted, passed out, and he was slammed into the toilet bowl. Gelviro told him he will follow. Gelviro reached room number 1 after 15 minutes, and he saw 2 police officers inside the room. He asked the police officers what happened to his friend, but he was told, you cannot enter because we were still investigating what happened to your friend. He, however, insisted in getting to room number 1, and once inside, in front of the toilet, he saw his friend Laude wrapped with a cream-colored blanket from the breast area down. His head was slumped inside the toilet bowl, and he has no life anymore. Galliamos went to Police Station 3 along Magsaysay Drive at about 12:05 a.m. to report the incident. Before he went to the police station, he told Jacinto Miraflor of his plan to go to the police station. He informed the police officer on duty that he saw a person slumped into the toilet bowl inside the toilet of room number 1, Celson Lodge. PO1 Pasamonte, who first responded to the crime scene with PO2 Adrian Orca, heard Galliamos telling them that he saw an unconscious person inside the toilet. PO2 Rick Quijado, the duty investigator of Police Station 3, also responded to the crime scene. He saw a male person who was sitting down, and his head was leaning on the bukana/bunganga mouth of the toilet bowl. He checked his pulse by holding his right wrist for about a minute, but he had no pulse anymore, and he was already cold. He informed SPO3 Tyrone DP Texon, chief investigator of Police Station 3, and told him that a dead person was found inside the toilet of room number 1, Celson Lodge, and there was a need to call for SOCO assistance. Marlon Benedict T. Baldueza, Philippine Red Cross volunteer, arrived with his team in Celson Lodge at 12:08 a.m. on October 12, 2014. At 11:30 p.m. on October 11, 2014, Liberty bodies Rose, Dal, and Pulido started looking for each other because it was getting close to their curfew at midnight. Rose and Pulido found each other outside the hotel they were in, and they found Dal on the street outside of Ambience nightlife. The 3 Liberty bodies, Rose, Dal, and Pulido, continued looking for Pemberton down the street, but they did not find him. While they were on the street, a girl came up to them and said, "Your friend came over here." Another person told the 3 Liberty bodies, "Your friend killed my friend." Rose, Dal, and Pulido thereafter took a cab back to the NSD port and reached HSV Westpac Express at around 12:15 a.m. to 12:20 a.m. On the other hand, Pemberton left room number 1 of Celson Lodge at around 11:30 p.m. Pemberton took a cab and he went back to the ship, and he reached the ship at around 12:25 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. Between 12:30 a.m. and 1 a.m. on October 12, 2014, Pemberton called on Rose and told him he wanted to talk to him. Pemberton told Rose that he thought he killed a he/she. Pemberton also told Rose that he got to the hotel with 2 women. One of them left and the other one stayed and got undressed. Pemberton saw that he had a penis and was not a female. Pemberton got angry and choked him until he stopped moving and then dragged him into the bathroom. After that, Pemberton left and took a cab back to the seaport. Pemberton also talked to Corporal Christopher Miller and told him that he fucked up bad because he got into a fight, and when he left, Laude was unconscious. Roman numeral number 3, evidence of the prosecution. The evidence of the prosecution showed that the deceased, Jeffrey Laude, spent the last 30 minutes of his life with Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton. Galviro and Laude met Pemberton at Ambience Nightlife at about 10:50 p.m. Laude offered sex to Pemberton and he agreed. Laude asked Galviro to accompany him and Pemberton, and the three, Laude, Galviro, and Pemberton, went to Selson Lodge to check in. Front desk officer Elias A. Galiamos gave them room number 1. The three entered room number 1, Selson Lodge, Magsaysay Drive, Olongapo City, at 10:55 p.m. 5 minutes later, Galviro went out of room number 1 and left. Only Laude and Pemberton were left inside room number 1. At 11:30 p.m., Galiamos saw Pemberton left and went down the lodge. Galiamos entered room number 1 and saw Laude unconscious and slumped into the toilet bowl while his body, arms, and legs were straight on the floor. Galviro identified Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton positively in a photo lineup as the American whom Laude offered sex at Ambience Nightlife and who went with them to Selson Lodge, and also the same American who checked in with him and Laude at room number 1 of Selson Lodge on October 11, 2014. Galviro also identified Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton in open court as the person who was with Laude inside room number 1, Selson Lodge, on October 11, 2014, from 10:55 p.m. until Galiamos found Laude unconscious inside the toilet of room number 1. Galiamos likewise positively identified Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton in open court as the person who checked in with Laude and Galviro at room number 1, Selson Lodge, and the same person who was left with Laude inside the same room after Galviro left the room, and the last person who left room number 1 before he saw Laude inside the toilet already unconscious and slumped into the toilet bowl. Pemberton's Liberty Bodies, Rose, Dahl, and Pulido, all said that they arrived at Ambience Nightlife at 10:50 p.m. They were separated because they met the respective sex partners. Rose and Pulido stayed inside the hotel for 20 minutes while Dahl remained at Ambience Nightlife. Later, Rose, Dahl, and Pulido started looking for each other because their liberty is almost up. They found each other in the street in front of Ambience Nightlife and the hotel where Rose and Pulido checked in. They were all looking for Pemberton, but they did not find him. The three Liberty Bodies, Rose, Dahl, and Pulido, decided to take a cab back to their ship HSB Westpac Express and arrived there at 12:10 a.m. Pemberton arrived shortly. Pemberton's confession to Lance Corporal Jaron Michael Rose that he killed the he-she, and to Corporal Christopher Blaine Miller that he fucked up bad, respectively. Duty Investigator PO2 Rick Quijado and PO1 Pasamonte responded to the crime scene. Galliamos told PO1 Pasamonte that he saw Laude slumped in the toilet bowl and unconscious. PO2 Rick Quijado and PO1 Pasamonte saw Laude sitting down on the bathroom's floor of room number 1, and his head was leaning on the bukana/bunganga mouth of the toilet bowl. PO2 Quijado held Laude's right wrists for a minute, and he found that he had no pulse anymore, and he was already cold. Marlon Benedicti Baldueza, Philippine Red Cross volunteer, arrived with his team in Selson Lodge at 12:08 a.m. on October 12, 2014. They observed that Laude was no longer breathing, unconscious, unresponsive, and his pulse was absent. His lower lip was swollen and inflamed. His tongue was protruding. His upper body and arms were cold, and his circulation was also absent. His team entered homicide under the box injury. Their findings is contained in a document denominated as pre-hospital patient care report they prepared. The investigator on case SPO3 Tyrone D. Pitexon stated in his affidavit that he witnessed the picture lineup process conducted by NCIS agent Brian Platt, NCIS agent Maria Markley, and investigator Ralph Baligud were Gilvero positively identified and pinpointed at picture number 2 as the person he and Laude met at Ambience Nightlife, and the same person who checked in with him and Laude at room number 1, Selson Lodge, prior to the killing of Laude. After which, NCIS agent Brian Platt positively identified and named the person depicted on picture number 2 as Joseph Scott Pemberton, Private First Class, U.S. Marine Corps, as the one pinpointed by Gilvero in the picture during the photo lineup. SOCO team leader, Police Inspector Edmar De La Torre, PO2 Jarlo Cruz, and Administrative Aide Roden Interlizo conducted a scene of the crime operation or investigation at room number 1, Selson Lodge. They started their investigation at 12:35 a.m. October 12, 2014, and released the crime scene at 10 a.m. on the same day. They found Laude inside the bathroom of room number 1 in a sitting position while his head was leaning on the mouth of the toilet bowl, partially naked with only the lower part of his body covered with a blanket. Laude's hair, face, and body were all wet, as well as the bathroom's wall and floor. Pictures of the crime scene and that of Laude inside the bathroom were taken by PO2 Cruz. Introlizo prepared a sketch of the crime scene. Results of the latent prints examination by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Laboratory revealed that the black Kama Sutra brand condom wrapper, which was recovered from room number 1's floor next to the bathroom by NCIS agent Maria Markley, contained Pemberton's latent print. Upon the request of investigator on case, an autopsy was conducted by Dr. Reynaldo Dave Jr., Medical Legal Officer of PNP Region 3, who issued Medical Legal Report number A14-163 RCLO3 and Supplemental Medical Legal Report number A14-163 RCLO3, where he certified that asphyxia by drowning as the cause of death of Laude and rendered the following post-mortem findings, to wit: fully developed, fairly nourished male cadaver in rigor mortis with post-mortem lividity at the face and at the posterior portions of the body. Palpebral conjunctivae are pale, lips and nail beds are cyanotic. There is thin, bloody, non-foul smelling discharge oozing from the mouth, head and neck. Portion, yes, Your Honor. Information. We will go now on the next paragraph, Your Honor. Dr. Dave also prepared an outline sketch where he delineated the locations of the hematomas, contusions, abrasions sustained by Laude. He executed the certificate of death, where he certified that he performed an autopsy upon the body of deceased Laude, that Laude died on October 12, 2014, and that the cause of death was asphyxia by drowning. Photographs of Laude's body were taken on the occasion of the autopsy by Dr. Reynaldo Dave Jr. PSI Marites A. Umbao, MD, Medical Legal Officer / PNP Pathologists, conducted a histopathological examination on Laude's lung tissue upon the request of Dr. Reynaldo Dave Jr. She prepared Medical Legal Report number H14-120 containing her histopathological findings, to wit: microscopic findings in the submitted tissues of this 32-year-old male, such as diffuse intraalveolar edema and hemorrhage with congestion of the blood vessels, are consistent with asphyxia due to drowning and strangulation. The findings of intraalveolar edema is consistent with asphyxia due to drowning, and morphologic findings of intraalveolar hemorrhage with marked congestion of blood vessels in some areas of the lung parenchyma with alternating collapse and overinsufflated alveolar space are highly suggestive that an external pressure was applied on the structure surrounding the upper airway, which resulted to the compression of the blood vessels supplying and draining the lungs. The absence of hemosiderin-laden macrophages or heart failure cells also ruled out that the intraalveolar hemorrhage was not due to a pathologic condition, but rather due to a very abrupt process. The morphologic findings in the microscopic examination of the submitted tissues concluded that this subject did not die due to natural cause. Lieutenant Commander Kenny Choi, USN, Senior Medical Officer, USS Peleliu, testified that during his general physical examination of Pemberton, he found that said accused have only abrasions and light scratches on different parts of his body. The accused's admission of his presence in the locus criminis of room number 1, Zelzon Lodge, and that he punched and choked Laude by applying the arm lock technique until Laude became unconscious. He dragged Laude to the bathroom and left him there. Marilo S. Laude testified on their expenses for the wake and burial of her deceased brother, Jeffrey Laude. The total expenses for the autopsy and wake amounted to 93,000 pesos, consisting of the costs for autopsy, coffin, and rentals for the 12-day wake. Laude was cremated and buried on October 24, 2014 at the Olongapo Heritage Garden. The burial expenses comprised of 50,000 pesos for the memorial lot, 11,500 pesos for interment services, and 750 pesos for the cremation and burial permits. She said the loss of her brother is hard and painful, and when she was asked to quantify in monetary terms the pain that she felt, she said it would be not less than 100 million pesos. Aside from the pain, she also claimed that they are entitled to other damages to serve as lesson for the Americans who goes sick to our country, that they can easily kill a person just like that. And what Pemberton did was inhuman because he treated her brother Laude like an animal. Because of this, she is seeking the same amount as that with moral damages of not less than 100 million pesos. They have an agreement in connection with the retention of the services of Roque Law Office and Associates and Attorney Virginia Suarez that they will pay them 15% of the amount they will receive as their attorney's fees. Julita Cabilan is the biological mother of Jeffrey Laude. She is a resident of Calubian, Leyte, whose livelihood includes providing at-home beauty services, nangungulot, naggugupit, nagkukulay, nagmamanicure. Her family in Leyte primarily relies on Laude for support. Oo, linggo-linggo siya nagpapadala. Bukod doon, yung suporta niya sa amin na pag-aaral ng mga kapatid niya, nabuhay kami halos kay Jeff. Her son Jeffrey Laude earns at least 5,000 pesos a week for providing beauty services, about 40,000 pesos in informal lending business, and cooking services for 5,000 pesos. From this, Laude sourced their weekly sustenance in Leyte. When Laude died, she along with her other children traveled from Leyte to Olongapo City for the wake and burial. They incurred 10,000 pesos for their travel expenses. As a mother, she spent sleepless nights and suffered mental anguish due to Laude's death. When she was asked to quantify in monetary terms the suffering and pain she felt for the death of her son Jeffrey Laude, she said it is not quantifiable. Roman numeral number 4, evidence for the defense. Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton raised the following defenses. Letter A, Pemberton did not kill Laude. He only armed locked him, which rendered him unconscious. But he was still breathing when he left him inside the bathroom, and that another person killed Laude. Pemberton admitted that he choked Laude by applying the arm lock technique, which rendered Laude unconscious, and dragged him inside the bathroom to douse him with water to revive him, but denied that he dunked Laude's head inside a toilet bowl, which caused his death. According to Pemberton, Laude was still breathing, and he did not have anything in his hand when he left him inside the bathroom of room number 1, Zelzon Lodge. However, Pemberton's Exhibit 30 shows that Laude is clutching a necklace or a piece of jewelry in his right hand. The necklace or piece of jewelry did not belong to either Pemberton or Laude. Laude was still wearing a necklace as shown in the same photograph. And the summary of Laude's belongings seized from room number 1 did not also include any bracelet. Pemberton said that he was only wearing a watch in the night of October 11, 2014. To prove that another person killed Laude, the defense relied on exhibits UUUUUU and UUUUU-1 of the prosecution, or the results of USACIL DNA report, which proves that a DNA profile of a person other than that of Laude's and Pemberton's was found on the neck of Laude. The remaining profiles could not be conclusively interpreted due to an insufficient amount of genetic data. It is the theory of the defense that the third DNA profile belongs to the assailant, the person who owns the piece of jewelry in the hands of Laude, the person who got Laude's money, which the prosecution cannot account for, and the person who killed Laude. Letter B. No criminal liability can attach to the action carried out by Pemberton against Laude, since he acted in defense of his life and honor. The defense also maintains that no criminal liability can attach to the actions carried out by Pemberton against Laude, since he acted in defense of his life. Pemberton agreed to Laude's offer of sex because he was made to believe that he is a female prostitute. However, when he discovered that he is a man, he was so disgusted and repulsed. He did not consent and expect that a man like Laude will perform an oral sex on him, and he found that experience so revolting and disgusting. To put a stop on the lewd and lascivious acts, which he considered as unlawful aggression being done to him by Laude, Pemberton pushed Laude away from him. As Pemberton was about to stand, Laude slapped him on the face, and when he saw Laude about to slap him again, Pemberton protected himself by hitting Laude. Pemberton and Laude started fighting after that by exchanging punches and kicks. Defense claims that Pemberton also feared for his life at that point because of the confluence of events that occurred prior thereto as follows. Letter A. The two girls asked Pemberton to have sex with them immediately after seeing him enter the ambience, and Galvero even led Pemberton by hand to Selson Lodge, hurriedly pulling him down the stairs of ambience and towards said motel. Letter B. The girls chose the motel. Letter C. The motel clerk / cashier, Galiamos, was familiar with the girls and did not ask for payment before giving them room number 1. Letter D. Galvero told Pemberton that he would go out to buy condoms and insisted on doing so even after Pemberton told him that he had some condoms with him. Galvero grabbed Pemberton's wallet to get money. Letter E. It turned out that Laude was a man. Letter F. Perhaps Galvero was a man too. Letter G. Pemberton was warned about scams in the Philippines. And H. When Pemberton pushed Laude away, Laude slapped him and hit him again. Pemberton was made to believe that the threat did not come from Laude alone, but also from his cohorts Galviro, Galliamos, and other persons who may be working with them to barge into the room and gang up on him and kill him. Pemberton had no defense himself and tried to subdue his attacker as soon as possible. In his attempt to subdue Laude, and because Laude was trying to tackle and push Pemberton, Pemberton got his arm around Laude and they fell back on the bed. Pemberton just held Laude there until he realized he was not moving. Pemberton defended his honor against Laude, who committed acts of lasciviousness against him under Article 336 of the Revised Penal Code. The unlawful aggression committed by Laude on Pemberton consisted of the acts of lasciviousness, kissing him on the neck and chest, and giving him oral sex, that Laude performed on Pemberton. Defense argued that if the Supreme Court considered a slap on the face as unlawful aggression, there is more reason to regard acts of lasciviousness on a man by another man who misrepresented himself to be a woman as unlawful aggression. Letter C. Pemberton is of good moral character, and he cannot commit the crime for which he is charged. Lisa Pemberton testified that her son Joseph is a loving, compassionate, kind-hearted, God-fearing, and not capable of committing the crime charged. People who know Pemberton, like Mr. Norman Sargent, Diane Rowe, and Timothy William Pepsin, are of the belief that he could not have possibly committed the crime charged against him. Prosecution's witnesses Jaron Michael Rose, Eric Bennett Dahl, Daniel Fabian Polido, and Christopher Blaine Miller attested that Pemberton had never been involved in any trouble, and he is level-headed, amiable, nice person, and he was never violent. Pemberton's character, attitude, and disposition coincide with his testimony that his conduct during the night of October 11, 2014 was only to protect and defend himself and his honor, and he did not intend and did not kill Laude. Go on. Yes, for the meantime. All rise, please. Court session and recess.
Matatanggalin ng tape na lang ano. Ayun, kita ka dulo.
Dagdagan mo ng tape, matatanggal. Matatanggal.
Lang kami nanonood.
Mas makapagpapuksa. Kariyan naman po kayo. Ilang minutes? 5 minutes na po. 5 minutes.
Legit. Gusto po.
Our time.
Ipinan niya? Dinalaw niya? Sabihin mo, dinalaw niya. Tama po, tama.
Madinig niya pala.
Oo, ngayon. Sabihin mo sa kanya, i-cut na yun. Ngayon lang, ano mata?
Yes, wala na ba? Patanggal to.
Yan na? Hmm?
Patanggal.
Ito.
Sabi ko natin, patanggal eh, habang nanginan.
Oo.
Sabi nga, di na malaglag ka. Sikyan natin. Ano, anak, please.
Okay na yan.
Pinapawisan ako kanina.
Okay na raw.
All rise please. Court session resumes. Please be seated. May I proceed now, Yan? Roman numeral number 5, discussion. Jeffrey Laude was found dead inside room number 1 of Selson Lodge on October 11, 2014 by Elias Galiamos, the front desk attendant, slash cashier, slash receptionist, slash bellboy of the motel. Except for the assailant and deceased Laude, there are no other persons, eyewitnesses inside the room, who can give direct testimony who killed Laude and how he was killed, making it quite difficult for the prosecution to prove who committed the crime and how it was committed. However, circumstantial evidence is admissible as proof to establish both the commission of a crime and the identity of the culprit. According to Section 4, Rule 133 of the Rules of Court, circumstantial evidence is sufficient for conviction if, letter A, there is more than one circumstance. B, the facts from which the inferences are derived are proven. And C, the combination of all the circumstances is such as to produce a conviction beyond reasonable doubt. While it is true that nobody saw Pemberton in the act of killing Laude, it does not follow that nobody can be said to have positively identified him as the one responsible for the death of Laude. The Supreme Court elucidated on the concept of positive identification of the accused. In the case of People versus Radel Gagliarde, which we find instructive in this case, it states, positive identification pertains essentially to proof of identity and not per se to that of being an eyewitness to the very act of the commission of the crime. There are two types of positive identification. A witness may identify a suspect or accused in a criminal case as the perpetrator of the crime, as an eyewitness to the very act of the commission of the crime. This constitutes direct evidence. There may, however, be instances where although a witness may not have actually seen the very act of commission of a crime, he may still be able to positively identify a suspect or accused as the perpetrator of a crime, as for instance, when the latter is the person or one of the persons last seen with the victim immediately before and right after the commission of the crime. This is the second type of positive identification, which forms part of circumstantial evidence, which, when taken together with other pieces of evidence constituting an unbroken chain, leads to only fair and reasonable conclusion, which is that the accused is the author of the crime to the exclusion of all others. Emphasis supplied. What we have in this case is the second type of positive identification. Gelviro testified that he and Laude met Pemberton at Ambience nightlife. Laude offered him sex and the latter agreed. Pemberton himself acknowledged this in his testimony. He said and his Liberty Bodies arrived at Ambience nightlife at 11 p.m. As he walked in, he was approached by two women. They came up to him and asked him, kinda pretty bluntly, if he wanna fuck. As he replied, yes, sure. After Pemberton agreed to have sex with the two women, Gelviro, and Laude. The three of them, Gelviro, Laude, and Pemberton, proceeded to Selson Lodge across Ambience nightlife. Galliamus testified that he attended two bakla gays who turned out to be Gelviro, Laude, together with American companion Pemberton, when they arrived at Selson Lodge and assigned to them room number 1. He saw the three of them entered room number 1. Pemberton also confirmed this when he testified that they were given room number 1. They entered the room and he observed that it was dark as only the bathroom lights were turned on. Gelviro said he left room number 1 after a few minutes, and Galliamus saw him when he came out of the room and went down the lodge. Pemberton likewise confirmed this. He said that Gelviro asked him money to buy condoms, and after he received the money, Gelviro left the room. Galliamus saw Pemberton left room number 1 at 11:30 p.m. and went down the motel. After a few minutes, he checked on the other occupant of room number 1, but the bathroom was closed. He went back to his post in the receiving area, and he thought that the other occupant was still taking a shower inside the bathroom. He went back to room number 1, and after a few minutes, he opened the bathroom's door, and there he saw Laude with his head slumped into the toilet bowl, and his body, arms, and legs straight down the floor. Laude was declared dead by the Philippine Red Cross volunteer, Marlon Benedict T. Baldueza, who arrived at Selson Lodge at 12:08 a.m. on October 12, 2014. Police Station 3 Duty Investigator P.O. Quijado testified that when he arrived at the scene of the crime, he held Laude's right wrist for a minute, and he found that he had no pulse anymore, and he was already cold. Gelviro identified Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton positively in a photo lineup and also in open court as the American whom Laude offered sex at Ambience nightlife and who went with them to Selson Lodge, and also the same American who checked in with him and Laude at room number 1, and the same person who was left with Laude inside the same room after he went out of that room in the night of October 11, 2014. Galliamus likewise positively identified Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton in open court as the person who checked in with Laude and Gelviro at room number 1, and the same person who was left with Laude inside the same room after Gelviro left the room, and the last person he saw who left the room before he saw Laude inside the toilet already unconscious and slumped into the toilet bowl. Though Gelviro and Galliamus may not have witnessed with their own eyes the actual killing of Laude, they were able to positively identify Pemberton as the perpetrator of the crime because Gelviro saw Pemberton as the last person with Laude inside room number 1 before Laude was killed, and Galliamus saw Pemberton as the last person coming out of room number 1 immediately before he discovered the unconscious body of Laude, who was later on declared dead by a Red Cross volunteer. Galliamus said he never left the reception area of Selson Lodge, which was located just outside of room number 1. This enabled him to monitor and observe all the people coming in and out of room number 1, and he categorically declared that there were no other persons who entered room number 1 after Pemberton left at 11:30 p.m. Gelviro and Galliamus testified in a categorical, spontaneous, and straightforward manner. An absence of any improper motive, the presumption is that they were not so actuated, and their testimonies are entitled to full faith and credit. Standing alone, this piece of evidence would not be sufficient to prove the guilt of the accused, but it is one piece of evidence which will be correlated with the other pieces of evidence in order to determine if the accused is actually the one responsible for the perpetration of the crime to the exclusion of all others. Both the prosecution and the defense admit that the deceased died of asphyxia due to a violent or unnatural nature. Hence, this court limits its discussion on the manner of death of the deceased. It must be that the prosecution presented evidence tending to prove that asphyxia was due to drowning, while the defense maintains that it was asphyxia due to neck compression applied by another person other than Pemberton. Proceeding therefrom, the task of this court is to determine whether the victim died of asphyxia by drowning, as proposed by the prosecution, or neck compression according to the defense. The cause of death is the injury, disease, or the combination of both injury and disease responsible for initiating the trend or physiological disturbance, brief or prolonged, which produce the fatal termination. On the other hand, the manner of death is the explanation as to how the cause of death came into being or how the cause of death arose. The manner of death, as indicated in the accusatory portion of the information, must be established with proof beyond reasonable doubt. Its significance was elucidated by the Supreme Court in People of the Philippines versus Hector Vasquez and Renato Vasquez, where the court ruled to acquit both accused, there being serious flaws in the testimonies of the prosecution witnesses, which tend to affect their credibility on material points relative to murder scenario, and the physical evidence contradicts the prosecution's allusions on the manner of death of the victim. Thus, we find the accused appellant's arguments worthy of merit. Prosecution witnesses Loreno Ocante, Jose Daliva, and Jesus Jusana apparently corroborated each other's testimony by declaring in open court that the deceased Primo Doliete was boxed and mauled by the accused appellants, with Hector Vasquez delivering the initial blow that felled Primo Doliete while the latter was urinating partly concealed by a banana plant. That as Primo Doliete was about to get up, Renato Vasquez hit the said deceased on the nape with a wooden instrument, more or less 1 meter in length and about the size of an arm in diameter, and that the Vasquez brothers dragged the stricken body of Primo Doliete to the nearby river and drowned him. Moreover, prosecution witness Jesus just believed that he was 10 meters away from the victim, gave a picture of the mauling aspect that led to the murder charges in the instant case. Contrary to the import of the aforestated statements during the trial proceedings of this case as to how Primo Doliete was mauled before he was drowned by the Vasquez brothers, the post-mortem examination as contained in the report of the rural health physician of Pontevedra Capiz, who conducted the said examination, is quite telling. The certificate reads, head, presence of an old subcutaneous hematoma at the occipital portion. Neck, no abnormal physical findings. Chest, presence of an old subcutaneous ecchymosis. Left chest about 2 to 3 inches long, somewhat circular in appearance. Lungs appeared to be markedly distended distended and exude water on pressure. Abdomen, no signs of external physical injuries noted. Extremities, no signs of external physical injuries noted. Conclusion, the cause of death of the victim was due to asphyxia or respiratory arrest secondary to drowning. Evidently, the medical legal report contained no signs of external physical injuries, particularly on the right face and the abdomen, where accused appellant Hector Vasquez allegedly delivered the fist blows, as recounted by witness Jesus Jusana. More importantly, the report did not reflect the alleged banging of the victim's nape with a wooden cane as uniformly asserted by prosecution eyewitnesses. If it were true that the victim was hit hard on the face that caused him to fall, there should have been some evidence of physical violence on his face. With respect to the victim's head, only an old subcutaneous hematoma at the occipital portion was found by the medical legal examiner. Occipital portion refers to the back part of the head, not the face. That Primo Doliete was boxed and mauled before he was drowned by the accused appellants. Thus, since the physical evidence on record runs counter to the testimonial evidence of the prosecution, witnesses' conclusions as to physical evidence should prevail. Considering the loose ends in the prosecution's theory, we find to be more credible and natural accused appellant's evidence to the effect that the deceased Doliete, who was drunk, accidentally drowned when the banca he rode on with his companion as they crossed the river. Trial courts must keep in mind that the prosecution must be able to overcome the constitutional presumption of innocence beyond a reasonable doubt to justify the conviction of the accused. The prosecution must stand or fall on its own evidence. It cannot draw evidence for the defense. Since the right to be presumed innocent is guaranteed by the Constitution, every circumstance favoring the innocence of the accused must be taken into account. Al contrario, proof against them must survive the test of reason. Inasmuch as the prosecution, in this case, failed to adduce that quantum of evidence necessary to warrant a conviction, the herein accused appellants perforce deserve an acquittal. Mindful of this foregoing, this court rules that Laude died of asphyxia by drowning. Prosecution witness Dr. Dave's testimony, as it is more consistent with the injuries sustained by the deceased. A perusal of treatises in medical jurisprudence, including that written by Dr. Pedro Solis, shows that the abnormal state of lungs, accumulation of blood-pink fluid in the bronchi, and blood-pink secretion from nasal and oral orifices are highly indicative of asphyxial death by drowning. Dr. Dave testified that he found all this upon concluding his post-mortem and autopsy examination on the deceased. Thus, Prosecutor Misuelo, question. Number 5, you state cut sections of the secondary bronchi revealed lumens that contain watery blood-pink fluid. Dr. Dave answered, the secondary bronchi are the part of the airways after the primary bronchus. They are the first division of the bronchus, and as the picture would show, there is watery blood-pink fluid within the lumen or space, ma'am. Question. Based on your knowledge and experience, doctor, what does it mean when the bronchi contain watery blood-pink fluid? Answer. That means that there is abnormal accumulation of fluid, whatever it is, that should not be there because this condition from the environment. Question. Number 6. The right and left lung are slightly enlarged, measuring 25 by 19 by 12 cm and 23 by 17 by 10 cm respectively. Both are boggy with slate brown external surface with moderate amount of anthracotic pigments. Cut sections revealed dark red homogeneous boggy parenchyma. There are no air bubbles and water bloody fluids oozes out from the parenchyma upon application of pressure. First of all, doctor, how did you make this finding? Answer: well, I cut the lungs out of the body and then sliced them into smallest portions, 1 inch thick, every slice. Then, after noticing that there is a blood-tinged fluid oozing out from them, I exerted pressure on the lung parenchyma. I noticed that there are no air bubbles coming out. There should be a frothy material. Frothy meaning bubbles mixed with fluid in a normal lung. Question: you said you exerted pressure. What kind of pressure did you exert upon the lung tissues? Answer: I pressed upon the tissues. Question: you said that there should be frothy material coming out of them. Why do you say that, doctor? Answer: ma'am, in a normal lung, I said frothy because a frothy material is an admission of liquid and air, so that the air manifests itself as bubbles when you exert pressure on the lungs. In cases there are no small amount of frothy materials, which means that the lungs contain fluid in abnormal level. Question: if there are no air bubbles, doctor, instead there was watery fluid, what that does mean, or what conclusion that can be derived from that finding? Answer: that the lungs contain water instead of air bubbles. Question: it is indicated here that there is a thin, bloody, non-foul smelling discharge oozing from the mouth. Can you please tell us what did you mean by that? Answer: I noticed a blood sticky fluid coming from the mouth spontaneously, ma'am. Question: to your mind, doctor, what would have caused this discharge to come out from the mouth of the victim? Answer: well, it just means that there is an accumulation of fluid, whether in the lungs and in the abdomen or the stomach of the cadaver. Question: picture number 4. What is depicted in that? Answer: this is another picture of the victim showing the face wherein there is a blood stick fluid coming out from the mouth. Another blood stick showing the right side of the face. Question: picture number 6, doctor. Answer: picture of the head showing blood stick fluid coming out from the mouth, and probably, I cannot determine if this is coming out also for the nose, because during the examination, the head of the alleged victim is turned from left to side. The reddish stick on the left and the right side of the face is coming from the nose, or also the same blood stick fluid which came from the mouth oozing on the right side of the face. Emphasis supplied. Confirming Dr. Davis' findings is Dr. Ombao, prosecution witness, and also a PNP medical legal officer. Upon conclusion of histopathological examination of the representative lung tissues taken from the deceased, Dr. Ombao found that the capillaries or alveolar spaces of the victim's lung tissues are filled with blood and of amorphous and proteinaceous material. Also, the capillaries are negative for hemosiderin-laden macrophages. With these findings, she opines that the presence of amorphous and proteinaceous materials in the capillaries is consistent with asphyxia by drowning. Thus, during her direct examination, Prosecutor Sususco questioned, "Now, before we proceed with the pictures, doctor, could you tell us what is this H14-120? What does this number mean?" Dr. Ombao answered, So before I will show the exact picture, I will show the normal lung so that we could appreciate the difference. This is the normal lung. There are the alveolar sacs. Can you see these lines? They look like lines, but these are capillaries. So the oxygen will go to the sacs, then it will go to the capillaries. So it will go to the red cell. It will be delivered to the different parts of the body. When I examine this slide, you can no longer appreciate the normal alveolar sac. Question. Doctor, what do you mean by those alveolar sac? Answer. Alveolar sacs, when you inhale, it will be inflated by the oxygen. And this oxygen will go to the capillary, will go to the red cell as the carrier, and this will be delivered to the different parts of the body for the utilization of our bodies. So you will no longer appreciate the capillaries. The capillaries, the alveolar spaces, are filled with blood. These are red blood cells. Supposedly alveolar spaces are space. They are filled with gas, but in this case, these spaces are filled with this blood and their proteinaceous material. Question. In your expertise as a pathologist, what could be the effect of this to a person? Answer. In this case, you can no longer put oxygen in the alveolar sac, and oxygen will not go to the capillaries for it to be carried by the red blood cell because there is no longer space. If you see these morphologic changes in a lung tissue, a patient or a person will suffer from asphyxia. So aside from these hemorrhages, you see this proteic and amorphous material. These are consistent with pulmonary edema. Question. In your expertise, what could have caused this? Answer. In a very abrupt process, this will be caused by drowning. Pulmonary edema will be caused by drowning. Question. Now, doctor, in describing your findings, you mentioned of three terms: asphyxia, then drowning, and then now compression. Will you please explain to us the relationship of these three terminologies you stated based on your findings? Answer. Because of the presence of the amorphous material and proteinaceous material, it is secondary to drowning. The cause of asphyxia, it is consistent with drowning. We do not see this in other cases except for natural. But this is not natural because you do not see any hidden macrophages. Bolstering the prosecution's theory is defense's own failure to account for the presence of blood-tinged froth in the lung secondary bronchi, a finding peculiar to antemortem drowning. In fact, Dr. Alfred Swain Taylor, in his book, The Principles and Practice of Medical Jurisprudence, considers the discovery of mucus froth in the air passages coupled with a watery condition of the organs as a satisfactory proof of asphyxia by drowning. Noteworthy is Dr. Umbau's testimony on this point. Prosecutor Sususko question. Now, based on your findings of the lung tissue, what could have happened? Why there was water inside the lungs of this person? Dr. Umbau. Answer. The water goes into the airway and went to the alveolar sac. Question. In what circumstances may water penetrate the lungs? Answer. Drowning. Question. Based on your expertise, is it possible for the water to go to the lungs when the person is already dead? Answer. Yes, but there will be no reaction. Question. Now, based on your examination in this lung tissue, is the person already dead when the water penetrated the lungs? Answer. No, that person is still alive because there were reactions. Question. So am I correct to understand that when the lungs of this person drowned, he was still alive? Answer. Yes, that person was still alive. Question. And this person, as you said, there was compression in the airway of this person. This person was also still alive? Answer: yes, because the intraalveolar hemorrhage are reactions. We do not see that in a dead person. This court notes that all three expert witnesses, Drs. Dave, Ombao, and Fortune, testified uniformly that a number of injuries suffered by the deceased are also consistent with asphyxia by neck compression. These include the lividity and petechiae on the face, the dark-colored protruding tongue, conjunctival hemorrhages on both left and right eye, and contused larynx. Specifically, Dr. David testified that the injuries on the larynx were caused by usually strong pressure, probably by an arm lock, on the upper portion of the neck, comprising the upper portion of the larynx, causing it to bleed. Dr. Ombao's histopathological findings on the submitted lung tissue of Laude's cadaver confirms this, to wit, the morphologic findings of intraalveolar hemorrhage with marked congestion of blood vessels in some areas of the lung parenchyma with alternating collapsed and overinsufflated alveolar spaces are highly suggestive that an external pressure was applied on the structure surrounding the upper airway, which resulted to the compression of the blood vessel supplying and draining the lungs. Thus, during her direct examination, Prosecutor Sosusco: question: what else did you find out? Dr. Ombao: answer: because drowning alone would not present us severe hemorrhage. It would present us intraalveolar hemorrhage. Inside the alveolar space, you see blood inside the alveolar space. Question: and what could be the causes of hemorrhages? Answer: when I see this slide, this is common among the compression of the blood vessel or the airway. So when I see this, it is consistent with the compression and external force applied in the airway of the subject. Question: what do you mean by compression of an external force based on your findings, doctor? Answer: I think there is force applied on the upper airway of the subject. Question: kindly describe to us what kind of force is that? Answer: it is a force that constricted or compressed the blood vessel. It could be an object placed on the upper airway that resulted the compression of the blood vessel. Question: now, doctor, in describing your findings, you mentioned three terms: asphyxia, then drowning, and then now compression. Will you please explain to us the relationship of these three terminologies you stated based on your findings? Answer: because of the presence of amorphous material and proteinaceous material, it is secondary to drowning. The cause of asphyxia, it is consistent with drowning. We do not see this in other cases except for natural. But this is not natural because you do not see any hidden macrophages. The hemorrhage is consistent with compression of the blood vessel in the airway. Corresponding thereto is accused's own admission of engaging the deceased in an arm lock, which consequently rendered him unconscious but still alive. Conceitedly, there are findings which are indicative that deceased also suffered from asphyxia by neck compression. However, absent any justification by the defense as to the presence of injuries peculiar to asphyxial deaths by drowning, this court concludes that the immediate cause of death of the deceased is asphyxia due to drowning. Correlating his findings with the facts and circumstances related to death, Dr. Davi opines that accused flushed down the toilet while the deceased's head was inside the toilet bowl. Consistent with Dr. Davi's opinion are the respective pressure marks on the victim's suprasternal notch and clavicular regions. Areas that came into contact with the rim of the toilet bowl, indicating the application of external pressure pressing forward the direction of the toilet bowl. Prosecutor Misuelo, question number 8. Doctor, you stated here pressure mark, supraesternal notch region measuring 1 by 0.5 cm, bisected by the anterior midline. Please explain that to us, Doctor. Dr. Dabi, A. The indented whitish at this area. Attorney Gruspe, witness pointing to the area below the Adam's apple. Dr. Dave, at the base of the sternum, at the base of the neck. Attorney Gruspe, witness pointing to the area between the sternum and the neck. Prosecutor Misuelo, question. Would you know, Doctor, how the victim could have possibly have these pressure marks on the said area of the body? Dr. Dabe, answer. Yes, ma'am. It corresponds to the area which rested on the bowl when they found the victim. Question number 9. Question. Number 9, Doctor, you also said pressure mark, right clavicular region, measuring 1 by 0.5 cm, 1 cm from the anterior midline. Please explain that, Doctor. Answer. It corresponds to the collarbone on this side. Attorney Gruspe, witness is pointing to the collarbone before the middle part of the body. Prosecutor Misuelo, question. Again, Doctor, would you know how much the victim could have had these pressure marks on the said area of his body? Answer. Dr. Dave, answer. It corresponds to the area which is in the contact with the bone. Question. As I already manifested, Your Honor, that the pressure marks were consistent with the bowl where he was found. So that means that he has knowledge as to how the victim was found. Court. Alright, witness may answer. Dr. Dave, answer. During the conduct of the conferences between the police investigator and the SOCO team, including myself, several pictures were shown to us as to where and how the victim was found during the conduct of the SOCO operation, and the victim, according to the pictures, was found with the head inside the bone and resting upon the rim of the bone. So that the knowledge imparted to us by the SOCO also gave us an idea on the picture on how the victim was recovered during the conduct of the SOCO operation. The head of the victim is inside the bone. Question. Having that in mind, Doctor, can you relate the findings that you have made in the body to how the victim was found in order to make a conclusion as to how he died? Answer. That is the only body of fluid that can drown the victim. I surmised that the bowl was flashed to submerge the head, and that excluded the inhalation of air. Instead, the victim inhaled water. Emphasis supplied. Accused's intent to drown the deceased was even made more manifest when he brought Laude to the side of the toilet where he can easily and conveniently access the flush lever as he maintains the deceased's head inside the toilet bowl. This court considers the crime scene photographs and finds the body's position relevant to the toilet's flush lever more logical, since accused had more ease to access to the flush lever, enabling him to simultaneously press the lever, releasing the water down the toilet bowl, and maintain the victim's head also down the bowl. Had the accused's intention is to revive the victim, the body should have been recovered slumped to the bathroom floor beneath the shower head and faucet, his head not inside the toilet bowl. Adding credence to the prosecution's theory is Dr. Dave's determination of the specific causes of the victim's neck injuries. Particularly, Dr. Dave testified on the presence of pressure mark between the sternum and the neck, and this corresponds to the area which rested on the bone, and the pressure mark on the collarbone before the middle part of the body, and he said this corresponds to the area which is in contact with the bone, and the pressure marks caused by a force pressing the victim's neck against the rim of the toilet bowl. This court presumes regularity in Dr. Davi's performance of his official duties. As a medical legal officer, he performed the following before certifying the victim's cause of death. Number 1, providing interpretation and correlation of facts and circumstances related to death. Number 2, rendering a factual, objective medical report for law enforcement, prosecution, and defense agencies. And number 3, separating death due to disease from death due to external cause for protection of the innocent. Absent any improper motive, this court gives Dr. Davi's testimony full faith and credit, not only because it came from a disinterested witness, but more importantly, from a medical legal expert whose duty is to look into medical legal cases. Dr. Fortune's imputation of bias to Dr. Davi is insufficient to discredit the latter, for the defense clearly failed to substantiate the same. This court considers Dr. Davi's omission to measure and test the lung fluid insufficient to disprove his findings and conclusion. This court finds it material that lung weight and appearance vary according to the amount of water inhaled and on whether it was a case of wet drowning or dry drowning. Consequently, distinguishing between antemortem and postmortem drowning based on the total lung weight is not possible unless the lungs are severely congested. The fact that Drs. Davi and Ombao are not board-certified forensic pathologists does not make their testimonies less credible. The principle is well settled that physicians and surgeons of practice and experience are experts, and that their opinions are admissible in evidence upon questions that are strictly and legitimately embraced in their profession and practice. And it is not necessary that a witness of this class should have made the particular disease involved in any inquiry as a specialty to make his testimony admissible as an expert. Accused actuation instantly after the incident at room number 1 is telling. Galliamos saw Pemberton immediately coming out of room number 1 before Galliamos discovered the unconscious body of Laude inside the bathroom of room number 1, which was later declared dead by the Philippine Red Cross volunteer. Pemberton wants the court to believe that he arm-locked Laude, which rendered him unconscious but did not dunk. Laude's head inside a toilet bowl which caused his death. He maintains that Laude was still breathing. His chest is still rising and falling when he left him inside the bathroom. If what Pemberton was saying is true, why did he surreptitiously and obtrusively leave room number 1 instead of helping Laude? Why did he not at least inform Galliamos that Laude was unconscious so he could have been brought to the nearest hospital for emergency treatment? Instead, all he wanted to do is to immediately disappear from Selson Lodge before Galliamos could discover what happened to Laude. This is a clear case of flight on the part of Pemberton right after the crime was committed. It has been truly said that the wicked flee even when no one pursueth, whereas the righteous are as brave as the lion. And it has been held that flight is evidence of guilt and of a guilty conscience. Moreover, what he did is inconsistent with ordinary human knowledge, observation, and experience. It has been appropriately emphasized that we have no test of the truth of human testimony except its conformity to our knowledge, observation, and experience. Whatever is repugnant to this belong to the miraculous and is outside of judicial cognizance. The admissions by the accused to Lance Corporal Jaren Michael Rose and Corporal Christopher Blaine Miller are considered as part of the res gestae and are admissible in evidence against the accused. After the incident in room number 1, Zelson Lodge, Pemberton took a cab and went back to the ship HSV Westpac Express, docked at NSD Port Subic Bay. When Rose, Dalpolido, and Miller were already asleep, Pemberton woke up Rose and told him, "I think I killed a he/she." Rose testified on this in his direct examination. Prosecutor Ladaga questioned, "So, what happened next after Lance Corporal Pemberton came up to you and said he wanted to talk to you?" Rose answered, "All that time we went to the front of the ship, we sat down." Question, "And what happened next after that?" Answer, "During that time we walked on our way off to the front of the ship. He said he thought that he killed a he/she in his words. And once we get off to the front of the ship, we begin to talk about, and I kept asking him what he meant and trying him again to clarify, and repeated himself. And I asked him if he is serious and on, and he didn't know. He seemed concerned about it, and that's why I kept trying to get more out of it at that point. I eventually got not the same answer, but eventually he said that he got to the hotel with 2 girls. One of them left, and during that point, the one stayed back, got undressed. He saw that it had a penis and was not a female, and at that point, he got angry and upset, and choked it until it stopped moving, and then dragged into the bathroom. At that point, he left, and then took a cab back to the seaport. Rose did not know what to do with the admission of Pemberton, and he decided to wake up their superior officer, Corporal Christopher Blaine Miller, to whom Pemberton also said, "I might have fucked up bad." Miller also testified on this in his direct examination. Prosecutor Ladaga questioned, "What did you do next?" Miller answered, "I asked Lance Corporal Pemberton if he was all right. He had something to tell me." Question, "What was the reply of Pemberton?" Answered, "The only thing he said to me was that he might have fucked bad." Prosecution witnesses Rose and Miller categorically testified on the admissions made to them by Pemberton. The statement, "I think I killed a he/she," made by Pemberton to Rose, and "I might have fucked bad," made by Pemberton to Miller, respectively, are in the nature of a res gestae. Under the rules of court, a declaration is deemed part of the res gestae and admissible in evidence as an exception to the hearsay rule when the following requisites concur. Number 1, the principal act, the res gestae, is a startling occurrence. Number 2, the statements were made before the declarant had time to contrive or devise. Number 3, the statements must concern the occurrence in question and its immediately attending circumstances. All these requisites are present in this case. Pemberton had just been through a startling and gruesome occurrence, the arm locking and drowning of Laude, which resulted to his death. His admission was made immediately when he went back to the ship, while he was still under the influence of said startling occurrence, and before he had an opportunity to concoct or contrive a story. His confession concerned the killing of Laude. Besides, Rose is a very close friend of Pemberton. They entered the U.S. Marine Corps at the same time, and they were batchmates in boot camp. Their rooms are next to each other, hence, Rose could not have been actuated by an improper motive in testifying against Pemberton. Likewise, Miller is Pemberton's superior, and he has no reason to concoct the statement intimated to him by Pemberton. When there is no evidence to indicate that witnesses for the prosecution were actuated by improper motives, the presumption is that they were not so actuated, and their testimonies are entitled to full faith and credit. Confession of accused to witnesses Rose and Miller is a strong evidence, falling under the res gestae. It is the theory of the defense that Laude's cause of death is asphyxia by neck compression, as they would like to introduce another suspect than Pemberton. To support their theory, Exhibit 30 was put to the fore. It shows Laude clutching a necklace or a piece of jewelry in his right hand. The defense said that the jewelry does not belong either to Laude or Pemberton, because Laude was still wearing his necklace as shown in Exhibit 30, while Pemberton testified that he was wearing only a watch that night. The summary of Laude's items or belongings seized from room number 1 does not include any bracelet either. There is a strong possibility then that the person who entered the room after Pemberton left owns the piece of jewelry and Laude, in his attempt to offer some form of resistance, was able to grab the necklace or piece of jewelry from the assailant. The assailant had motive to enter the room because Laude had at least 20,000 pesos with him when he entered room number 1. However, when the police found him, there was no money except for a little over 1,000 pesos. Also, the NCIS confiscated all the personal effects of Pemberton, but no such money was found. The defense surmised that someone took Laude's money, and it was not Pemberton. Defense also relied on exhibits UUUUUU and UUUUUU-1, or the results of USACIL DNA report, which prove that a DNA profile of a person other than that of Laude's and Pemberton's was found on the neck of Laude. Paragraph 2 of the USACIL DNA report thus states, on 21 January 15, the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Laboratory, USACIL, completed a DNA forensic examination of numerous items of evidence submitted by NCIS RA Manila. During the DNA examination, a mixture of at least 3 DNA profiles was obtained from neck swabs of V/Laude. The major contributor was V/Laude. The remaining profiles could not be conclusively interpreted due to an insufficient amount of genetic data. So, who could be that person who entered room number 1 after Pemberton left? At that time, aside from Pemberton, only Galiamos, Gelviro, and Miraflor knew that Laude was inside room number 1. But what could have been motivated them to kill Laude? Galiamos is the front desk officer, bellboy, cashier in that motel. Gelviro, on the other hand, is the friend of Laude, while Miraflor is also an employee in the motel and at the same time the motel owner's father. The defense surmises that the assailant has a motive to enter room number 1 because Laude had 20,000 pesos in his possession at that time. This fact is known only to Gelviro and not to Galiamos and Miraflor. But is this enough motive for Gelviro to kill his friend for the petty sum of 20,000 pesos only? This is quite implausible, and no evidence was presented by the defense to support it. How about Galiamos and Miraflor? What could have motivated them to kill Laude? Galliamos and Miraflor were in Selson Lodge because they were working there at that time, and Laude went there as a customer. As testified to by Galviro, he, Laude, and Pemberton went to Selson Lodge to check in, and front desk / bellboy / cashier Galliamos gave them room number 1, and they entered the room. Aside from this encounter with Galliamos, Galviro did not mention any other occurrence which transpired between Laude and Galliamos, or between Laude and Miraflor, for that matter, which could have motivated either Galliamos or Miraflor to do wrong against Laude. How about the owner of the piece of jewelry? Is he the possible assailant of Laude? Defense claims that in Laude's attempt to offer some form of resistance, he was able to grab the assailant's necklace or piece of jewelry. How could this be when Pemberton said Laude was unconscious when he left him inside the bathroom? Does it mean to say that Laude was able to regain his consciousness on his own and had that strength to put up resistance to his assailant? This is unlikely to be true, and it is simply inconsistent with ordinary human knowledge, observance, and experience. It has been appropriately emphasized that we have no test of the truth of human testimony, except its conformity to our knowledge, observation, and experience. Whatever is repugnant to this belongs to the miraculous and is outside of judicial cognizance. The results of USACIL DNA report is not conclusive either, that there was another person who entered room number 1. The report stated the remaining profiles could not be conclusively interpreted due to an insufficient amount of genetic data, meaning the third person whose DNA profile was found on the neck of Laude cannot be identified, so it cannot be determined who that person is. This DNA profile may have come from the SOCO team members who processed the crime scene, or from the police officers who first responded to the crime scene, or even from the volunteers of the Philippine Red Cross who were summoned by the police officers to evaluate the unconscious body of Laude. There is a possibility for this, and this cannot be discounted. The more plausible suspect is Pemberton himself, because he is the only person who has motive to kill Laude. He was deceived by Laude into believing that he was a woman, when in fact he was a man, when he offered him sex for pay. He found the experience, being kissed in the neck and chest and given oral sex by a man, so revolting and disgusting, which led him to kill Laude. As a rule, the motive of the accused in a criminal case is immaterial, and not being an element of a crime, it does not have to be proved. However, evidence of motive is relevant or essential, where the identity of the assailant is in question, like what the defense tried to do in this case, to introduce a new suspect or assailant aside from Pemberton. Besides, Galliamos testified in a straightforward, spontaneous, and frank manner that there were no other persons who entered room number 1 after Pemberton left. He was posted all the time at the receiving area just in front of room number 1, which allowed him to monitor all the persons that could have entered room number 1. Hence, his testimony deserves great weight. As the court have already discussed earlier, Pemberton was the last person seen with Laude when he was still alive, and also the last person with Laude before Galliamos discovered the unconscious body of Laude inside the bathroom, which later declared dead. All of the above circumstances, which were sufficiently established by the prosecution, were taken together by the court as they formed an unbroken chain that led to the reasonable conclusion that Pemberton, to the exclusion of all others, is responsible for the killing of Laude. In the attempt of the defense to exculpate Pemberton from the charge against him, they presented his mother, Lisa Pemberton, to establish his good moral character. She said Pemberton is loving, compassionate, kind-hearted, God-fearing, and not capable of committing the crime charged against him. People who knew Pemberton are of the belief that he could not have possibly committed the crime for which he is charged. His own colleagues in the U.S. Marine Corps, namely Miller, Rose, Dahl, and Pulido, who were presented by the prosecution, attested that Pemberton is a good man and that he was never engaged in any physical fights. The influence of the good moral character of the accused, as evidence in criminal cases, depends upon the nature and circumstances of the crime charged and upon the probative force of the proof presented as to the guilt of the accused. If the crime charged is one which presupposes cool deliberation on the part of the accused and relates to the actions of daily and common life, evidence of good moral character is strong. There are no doubts that the accused possesses a good moral character, as shown by the testimonies of his mother, his Liberty Bodies, his colleague from the U.S. Marine Corps, and also people from their community in New Bedford, Massachusetts, USA. However, if the evidence of the crime is clear and convincing, like the one obtaining in this case, evidence of good character will not prevail. What is the crime committed? Is it murder or homicide? The crime charged is murder, defined and penalized under Article 248 of the Revised Penal Code as follows. Article 248, murder. Any person who, not falling within the provisions of Article 248, shall kill another, shall be guilty of murder, and shall be punished by reclusion perpetua to death, if committed with any of the following attendant circumstances. Number 1, with treachery, taking advantage of superior strength, with the aid of armed men, or employing means to weaken the defense, or of means or persons to ensure or afford impunity. Number 2, in consideration of a prize, reward, or promise. Number 3, by means of inundation, fire, poison, explosion, shipwreck, stranding of a vessel, derailment or assault upon a railroad, fall of an airship, or by means of motor vehicles, or with the use of any other means involving great wastes and ruin. Number 4, on occasion of any of the calamities enumerated in the preceding paragraph, or of an earthquake, eruption of a volcano, destructive cyclone, epidemic, or other public calamity. Number 5, with evident premeditation. Number 6, with cruelty, by deliberately and inhumanly augmenting the suffering of the victim, or outraging or scoffing of this person. The attendance of any of the foregoing circumstances qualifies the killing to murder. Alleged as the qualifying circumstances are treachery, abuse of superior strength, and cruelty, which are now discussed in that order. The court cannot appreciate the qualifying circumstance of treachery in this case. For treachery to be considered, 2 elements must concur. Number 1, the employment of means of execution that gives the persons attacked no opportunity to defend themselves or retaliate. And number 2, the means of execution were deliberately or consciously adopted. In other words, there must be evidence both as to the manner of execution of the crime and the clear intent of the accused to employ such means. The prosecution maintains that treachery is present because Pemberton attacked, assaulted, boxed, beat up, strangled, and choked Laude from behind. To prove their claim, the prosecution presented a statement of NCIS agent Michael D. McCarver. In his report dated 12 October 2014, that Rose and S/Pemberton also told him that he choked her out from behind with his arms. However, Lance Corporal Jaren Michael Rose did not allege this matter in his statement dated 12 October 2014. Rose also explained this discrepancy by admitting that it is possible that he did not include such a statement in his statement because he was not really sure if these matters were actually relayed to him by Pemberton. Rose failed to declare in unequivocal terms whether Pemberton admitted to him that he choked Laude from behind when he testified in court. Thus, Attorney Tolosa, question. Now, because Agent McCarver said that during the interview he had with you, you said that Pemberton relayed to you that he choked her out from behind with his arms and that he choked her a couple of minutes. Now, I've gone over the video footage of your interview again and again and I can't find that. So can I ask you directly, based on your recollection, you think you may have said that to Agent McCarver during your interview? Rose answered, it's possible. Question, Your Honor, I'm showing the witness a document which is previously marked by the prosecution as Exhibit E. Corporal, this is the statement that you've mentioned a while ago. May I request just go over it? No need to read it aloud, then just read it on your own. Witness going over his statement. You would admit, Corporal, that in this sworn statement that you executed, you did not say that Joseph told you that he choked her out from behind with his arms and that he choked her from a couple of minutes, correct? Answer, correct. Question, you would admit that you executed this statement after the interview was conducted by Agent McCarver? Answer, correct. Question, and before you executed this statement, you were asked to think carefully about what occurred that night and then put it in writing because this will be your official statement on the matter, correct? Answer, correct. Question, and the reason why you did not include such a statement in this document is that you were not really sure if these matters will actually relate to you by Joseph, right? Answer, that is possible. There were no eyewitnesses to the killing of Laude who can give full details on how the fight between Pemberton and Laude started, which resulted to the death of Laude. Prosecution witness PCI Edmar De La Torre, SOCO team leader who processed the crime scene, admitted that SOCO found no evidence whatsoever which could indicate that Laude was attacked suddenly and swiftly, attacked from behind, or not able to offer any resistance at all. Also, P.O. Jarlo Cruz, a member of the SOCO team who processed the crime scene, admitted he does not know how Laude was attacked. Another prosecution witness, Dr. Reynaldo Dave Jr., also testified on cross-examination that at some point it is actually possible that some of the wounds of Laude have been inflicted while Laude was facing the assailant. Where no particulars are known as to the manner in which the aggression was made, nor how the act which resulted in the death of the deceased began and developed, it can in no way be established from mere suppositions drawn from circumstances prior to the very moment of aggression that the accused had employed means tending to ensure its success without danger to his person, which constitutes treachery as defined by the Penal Code. qualifying circumstance of treachery may not be simply deduced from presumption, as it is necessary that the existence of this qualifying or aggravating circumstance should be proven as fully as the crime itself in order to aggravate the liability or penalty incurred by the culprit. To prove the existence of abuse of superior strength, the following must be established. Number 1, the accused is physically superior to the deceased. Number 2, the former took advantage of such superior strength to overcome the latter's resistance to consummate the offense. To show the physical superiority of the accused to the deceased, the prosecution banked on the accused's physical and martial arts training in boot camp, his expertise in contact sports like boxing, his age, he is 19 years old when the crime was committed, while Laude was 26 years old, and the fact that he is a man. On the other hand, which Laude was born as a man, he is a transgender who felt, acted, dressed, moved, and talked like a woman, according to prosecution witnesses Marilu Laude and Julita Cabilan, which made him weaker than Pemberton, who is a man. Though Marilu Laude and Julita Cabilan are not expert witnesses on the subject matter about transgender, their opinions as ordinary witnesses on the emotion, behavior, condition, or appearance of Laude, which they have observed, are admissible in evidence. However, as to the question of whether a person who is born as a man but acts, dresses, feels, talks, and behaves like a woman, or what is called as a transgender, would diminish the strength of that person, is beyond the capacity of ordinary witness to prove, and also beyond the judicial notice of the court, and that an expert witness should have been presented by the prosecution to prove the same, but the prosecution did not. Second, the prosecution must show that Pemberton purposely selected or taken advantage of his superior strength to facilitate the killing of Laude. Granting that Pemberton is stronger than Laude because of his stamina, muscular physique, brought about by his age, training in boot camp, and his being a contact sports enthusiast, however, none of the prosecution witnesses adequately described to the court how Pemberton made use of his strength and skills in killing Laude. Prosecution witness Dr. Rinaldo Dave Jr. testified that based on the injuries sustained by Laude, he cannot tell the strength of the attacker. Likewise, abuse of superior strength is not present when killing was unplanned and not premeditated. The events leading to the killing of Laude was not planned and not deliberated. Pemberton did not know Laude in the first place, and he was out on liberty that night when he was offered sex by Laude, who appeared and dressed like a woman, which he accepted. However, when he discovered that the person on top of him, kissing and giving him oral sex, was a dude, man, he found the situation so revolting and disgusting that led him to armlock Laude and drown him in the toilet bowl, which caused his death. From the foregoing, the prosecution failed to establish the accused took advantage of his superior strength in killing Laude. Could we have our next year? Yes, 5 minutes. Thank you. All rise, please. Court session on recess. Kaya ko pa ba? Ilan pa ba? 38 pages pa. Good luck. Ay, thank you.
appreciate it. Sir, are you in it?
60 lang, 30 na yung kalahati.
Been long day already, so
Nasa mga 80 pages na. 38
it's
pa.
going. Now we're just
38 pages.
it's over.
Tubig.
38 pages pa lang.
Tubig.
Alam mo, meron kami dyan.
Kuha kami ng cellphone.
All rise, please. For session.
Please be seated. Thank you. Yes, Your Honor. For cruelty to be considered as qualifying circumstance for the crime of murder, the following requisites must be present. Number 1, that the injury caused be deliberately increased by causing other wrong. And number 2, that the other wrong be unnecessary for the execution of the purpose of the offender. The test is whether accused deliberately and sadistically augmented the wrong by causing another wrong not necessary for its commission, or inhumanly increased the victim's suffering, or outraged or scoffed at his person or corpse. Deducing from the Supreme Court's ruling, if the acts done are necessary for the execution, for the purpose of the offender, or for the commission of the crime, then the acts are not considered cruelty. When Pemberton arm-locked Laude, Laude became unconscious, but he had not yet lost his life at that point. He lost his life only after Pemberton drowned him into the toilet bowl. Drowning is a necessary act to effect the killing of Laude. Thus, it was not done to augment his suffering. This is confirmed by the post-mortem findings of Dr. Dave that Laude's death is due to asphyxia by drowning. From the established facts, cruelty could not be attendant when the crime was committed by the accused. Consequently, due to the failure of the prosecution to establish any of the qualifying circumstances alleged in the information, the killing of Laude amounted only to homicide, which is defined and penalized with reclusion temporal under Article 249 Revised Penal Code. In their memorandum, the defense interposed justifying and mitigating circumstances to be appreciated in favor of accused, assuming that Pemberton committed an unlawful act against Laude. These are as follows. Letter A, he acted in defense of his honor and life. Letter B, passion and obfuscation. Letter C, he acted in immediate vindication of a wrong done to him. Letter D, he voluntarily surrendered to the court. And E, he was drunk at the time of the incident. The accused is invoking the justifying circumstance of self-defense. It is now settled that when an accused invokes self-defense, he admits the infliction of the injury, and the burden of the evidence consequently shifts to him. The posture taken by the accused is conflicting. Accused is invoking self-defense, but denies the killing of Laude. How could that be? Nevertheless, this court proceeds to discuss whether justifying circumstance of self-defense or privilege mitigating circumstance of incomplete self-defense is present in this case. An indispensable requisite of self-defense is that the victim must have mounted an unlawful aggression against the accused. Without such unlawful aggression, the accused cannot invoke self-defense as a justifying circumstance or incomplete self-defense as a privilege mitigating circumstance. The deceased, as testified to by prosecution witness, wore makeup and women's clothing in offering sex in exchange for money to male customers. Aware of their customers' preference of procuring female sex workers, prosecution witness Mark Clarence Gelviro testified that on October 11, 2014, the deceased was dressed as a schoolgirl when he offered sex for a fee to accused and had even deliberately concealed his gender from the latter. The offer was accepted by the accused and they engaged in sex. Accused argued that the lewd acts, kissing him on the neck and chest and performing oral sex on him, committed by the deceased without his consent, that it be done to him by a man is tantamount to fraud. This consists acts of lasciviousness under Article 336 of the Revised Penal Code, which is akin to an unlawful aggression which he repelled to defend his honor. By judicial precedent, specifically in Salvador Flor-de-Lis versus People, this court holds that acts of lasciviousness, as defined in Article 336 in relation to Article 335 of the Revised Penal Code, may not be committed by fraudulent machinations. In Salvador, which was promulgated by the Supreme Court on March 3, 2010, long after Congress enacted Republic Act No. 8353, Anti-Rape Law, and thus the introduction of fraudulent machinations as a new mode of committing rape, the Supreme Court reiterates that acts of lasciviousness may only be committed under the following circumstances. Number 1, by using force or intimidation. Or number 2, when the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious. Or number 3, when the offended party is under 12 years of age. Neither did the defense show that the deceased used force or intimidation in order to commit the alleged lascivious acts of Pemberton. Since Laude did not commit lascivious acts on the accused, there is no unlawful aggression to speak of which justifies him to defend his honor. Accused likewise claims that his life was threatened when the deceased slapped him and he was again attempting to mount another attack on him. Coupled with the immediate threat from Laude's cohorts Gelviro and Gallamos and all other persons who are working with them, accused said that his life was in danger. Hence, there was a necessity to protect himself. Circumstances were enumerated by the accused, which created that belief in his mind that Gelviro and Gallamos, together with their group, will barge into the room, gang up on him, and kill him. This led him to defend himself and subdue Laude, who was attempting to slap him for the second time. However, at that moment, there were only two of them, Laude and Pemberton, inside the room, without Gelviro and Gallamos, with insight making his fear or threat merely imaginary and unfounded. Apart from it, a slap on Pemberton's face coming from Laude will not cause any real or imminent threat on his life either. The test for the presence of unlawful aggression under the circumstances is whether the aggression from the victim put in real peril the life or personal safety of the person defending himself. The peril must not be an imagined or imaginary threat. Having that in mind as the guide, the court notes that unlawful aggression is wanting under the circumstances. The attack coming from Laude did not put in real peril the life of Pemberton, as well as his personal safety, while the threat coming from Gilviro and Galliamus are merely imaginary. Self-defense as a justifying circumstance or incomplete self-defense as a privileged mitigating circumstance cannot be appreciated without the unlawful aggression being clearly established by the defense. The mitigating circumstance of passion and obfuscation is present in this case. The requisites of passion and obfuscation are: number 1, that there be an act, both unlawful and sufficient, to produce such a condition of mind. And number 2, that said act, which produced the obfuscation, was not far removed from the commission of the crime by a considerable length of time, during which the perpetrator might recover his normal equanimity. Pemberton was on liberty that night. Laude, who was dressed and looked like a woman, made the first move and offered sex to Pemberton in exchange for money. And the latter agreed because he was feeling horny at that time. Laude tagged along his friend Gilviro to have threesome with Pemberton. Pemberton was made to believe that Gilviro and Laude were women. Laude and Gilviro performed oral sex on Pemberton one after the other. When it was Laude's turn to perform oral sex on Pemberton for the third time, Pemberton was already naked and lying down on the bed. Laude started kissing him on the neck and chest, and started giving him a head oral sex. Pemberton could have been so excited and sexually aroused by then, and he started reaching for Laude's vagina, hoping that he could consummate the sexual act and satisfy his sexual desire, when he felt something weird which should not have been there, and he realized that what was on top of him was a dude, man, and not a woman. He was so disgusted and repulsed with what he discovered. He found the situation so revolting and so despicable, and this overcame his reason and self-control. Pemberton was so enraged and incensed by the deceased's misrepresentation, and in the heat of passion, he arm-locked the deceased, dragged him inside the bathroom, and dunked his head into the toilet bowl. He did all this to the deceased immediately after he discovered him to be a man without any delay, which would allow him to regain his composure and control of himself. Because of the foregoing, the mitigating circumstance of passion and obfuscation should be counted in favor of the accused. The mitigating circumstance of immediate vindication of a grave offense under Article 13, Paragraph 5 of the Revised Penal Code cannot be considered apart from the mitigating circumstance of passion or obfuscation under Article 13, Paragraph 6, because these two circumstances arose from one and the same incident. Example, the killing of Laude because he misrepresented himself to be a woman and offered sex to Pemberton, and the latter accepted it, thinking that he, and the latter on the discovery that person, Laude, kissing and giving him oral sex is a man, so that these two circumstances should be considered as one mitigating circumstance. Under Article 13, Paragraph 3 of the Revised Penal Code, the circumstance that the offender had no intention to commit so grave a wrong as that committed mitigates criminal liability. However, this mitigating circumstance cannot be applied in favor of Pemberton either. As we have already discussed, bits and pieces of evidence which are clearly established abound in the nature of circumstantial evidence and point to Pemberton as the one responsible for the death of Laude, to the exclusion of others. Dr. Rinaldo David Jr.'s medical legal report said that Laude died of asphyxia by drowning, while Dr. Marites Umbao's histopathological findings on the lung specimen of Laude's cadaver are consistent with asphyxia due to drowning and strangulation. Pemberton admitted that he put pressure on Laude's neck by way of an arm lock, and defense witness Dr. Raquel Fortun also admitted that an arm lock or neck hold is an example of compression that can lead to a loss of consciousness, and that it is dangerous as it could lead to death, and there have been cases of death. After Pemberton strangled Laude, he dragged him inside the bathroom and dunked his head into the toilet bowl. The findings of Dr. Dave regarding the presence of the pressure marks on Laude's neck caused by a force pressing the victim's neck against the rim of the toilet bowl will confirm that in fact Pemberton submerged Laude's head into the toilet bowl. This is corroborated by the findings of the SOCO team led by PSI Edmar de la Torre that Laude's head, hair, and face are wet. This is further strengthened by Pemberton's own account that the shower inside the bathroom was not working at that time. Hence, there could be no other source of water other than the water in the toilet bowl where Laude was drowned. All the acts employed by Pemberton were reasonably sufficient to produce, and did actually produce, the death of Laude. For this reason, he cannot claim the mitigating circumstance of lack of intent to commit so grave a wrong, and that he actually committed. Likewise, the court cannot accede to the accused's claim that he should get the mitigating benefit of voluntary surrender. Based on jurisprudence, the mitigating circumstance of voluntary surrender should be appreciated when the following requisites are present. Letter A, that the offender had not actually been arrested. B, that the offender surrendered to a person in authority or to the latter's agent. And C, that the surrender was voluntary. The circumstances surrounding this case is peculiar. When the information was murder against Pemberton was filed by Olongapo City Prosecutor's Office before the Regional Trial Court Olongapo City, Zambales on December 15, 2014, Pemberton was already under the custody U.S. Embassy Manila, and he was detained at the Joint United States Military Assistance Group, JUSMAG, Camp Aguinaldo, Quezon City. Thereafter, this court issued a warrant of arrest against him on December 16, 2014. The Department of Foreign Affairs, through Department Note number 14-4466, served the warrant of arrest upon Pemberton through the Embassy of the United States, Manila, and duly received by Mr. Nathaniel Young, political officer of the embassy. Pursuant thereto, Pemberton appeared before the court on December 19, 2014, to submit himself under the jurisdiction of the court, and a commitment order was issued. Strictly speaking, the surrender of Pemberton on December 19, 2014 cannot be considered as voluntary and spontaneous that serves as a mitigating circumstance, because the warrant of arrest was already issued and served upon him. Thus, he is already considered arrested prior to his appearance before the court. Finally, in order that intoxication be treated as a mitigating circumstance, the defense must show that the intoxication is not habitual, not subsequent to a plan to commit a felony, and the accused's drunkenness affected his mental faculties. Pemberton said that he drank 3 to 4 shots of liquor, 3 to 4 shots of mixed drinks, and 6 bottles of Red Horse beer at Willie's Bar, and he was already drunk when Gilbero and Laude approached him at Ambience nightlife. Prosecution witnesses Rose, Dahl, and Pulido confirmed that they, including Pemberton, consumed alcohol that night, and they are all intoxicated. Defense witness Dr. Fortune stated that the concentration of 80 ml per DL in the blood constitutes the legal definition of drunk driving in the United States, and for an average individual, this alcohol concentration may be reached after consumption of 3 standard drinks consisting of 3 12 ounces bottle of beer, 15 ounces of wine, or 4 to 5 ounces of distilled spirits. Thus, based on this standard, Pemberton is considered drunk. Dr. Fortune said that the overall effect of intoxication on the individual is diminished neurological functions such as reflexes, mobility, and judgment. This is confirmed by a study that a person who is drunk has a confused mind, irregular behavior, and his movement is uncontrolled. It was also shown that Pemberton's drunkenness slowed down his reflexes and mental faculties and resulted to his lack of physical coordination. Pemberton, being a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, is not a habitual drinker, as they get to drink only when they are on liberty. Lastly, Pemberton did not have any plan to kill Laude in the night of October 11, 2014, as he and his buddies were only out on liberty, and he did not know Laude. Thus, his drunkenness is not subsequent to a plan to commit a felony. Having met the requisites, Pemberton should be accorded the benefit of the mitigating circumstance of intoxication. The award for damages in criminal cases stems from Article 100 of the Revised Penal Code, which states, every person criminally liable for a felony is also civilly liable. In accordance thereto, this court grants the following civil damages to the heirs of the deceased. To start with, the accused is ordered to pay 50,000 pesos as civil indemnity for the death of Laude. For loss of earning capacity, the court deems it proper to award the same. Although the prosecution failed to present documentary evidence to support the mother's claim for loss of earning capacity, such failure does not necessarily bar the recovery of damages, for this court considers the testimony of the decedent's mother as a fair and reasonable estimate of damages for loss of earning capacity. Giving credence to her testimony as to the victim's income is her engagement in the same occupation and that of her sons, and the frequency of her visits to Olongapo, where her son provided beauty services. Thus, Prosecutor Ladaga, question: Nabanggit nyo na nag-home service, nagugupit, nagmamanicure. Ano pong kinalaman nito kay Jennifer? Mrs. Kabilan. Answer, kasi lagi akong lumuluwas. Sabi niya kung ano daw yung pinakain ko daw sa kanya, paggupit, pagkulot, yon ang natutunan at minahal niya. Question, ibig niyo po bang sabihin yun po ang pinagkakakitaan ni Jennifer? Answer, bukod pa doon may pautang siyang 400,000 pesos, mga 5 taon na siguro. Question, wala po siyang trabaho pero ito ang pinagkakakitaan niya, yung pagpapautang. Answer, home service. Question, kung sinabi ninyong home service, ano po ang ibig niyong sabihin? Answer, kasi minsan sinama niya ako sa barkada niya, nagpa-home service. Automatic, 500, may tip pa siya. Tapos minsan kapag may birthday, kinukuha din siya magluto. Question, more or less, kaya niyo pong i-estimate kung magkano ang kinita niya sa pagkulot, paggugupit? Answer, alam ko kasi trabaho ko yon eh. Kung sa Bisaya, 40 ako, dito lalo pa, home service, mas malaki. 3 beses siguro. Question, so beautician po kayo? Answer, oo. Nangungulot, naggugupit, nagkukulay, nagmamanicure ako. Question, so alam niyo ba more or less kung magkano ang kinita ni Jennifer bilang beautician? Answer, pinakamahina nakita niya sa isang linggo, halos 5,000 kasi pag umuwi ako dito sa Olongapo sa kanya ako tumitira. Emphasis supplied. The rule of allowing testimonial evidence as long as the court can make a fair and reasonable estimate of damages for loss of earning capacity was applied by the Supreme Court in Plato versus Lomboy and People versus Garcia. Despite the absence of documentary evidence to support the widow's claims, the court still awarded loss of earning capacity. This is reiterated in the recent case of People versus Jory Wahiman, where the Supreme Court based the award of lost earnings on the testimony of the widow. Thus, says the court, however, we are inclined to award lost earnings considering that the deceased, as testified by his widow, was the manager of Stanfilco Dole Philippines in Malaybalay City and was receiving a monthly salary of 95,000 pesos. Decedent's omission to declare his occupation in his postal identification card does not bar his heirs' recovery of indemnity for loss of earning capacity. This court considers sufficient the testimonies of the decedent's sibling and mother to establish that the decedent derived income during his lifetime and had, in fact, provided weekly sustenance to his mother in Leyte. As can be called from the records, such facts remain unrefuted by the defense. Significantly, the defense waived his right to cross-examine the decedent's mother and thus failed to raise objections pertaining to the latter's claim for indemnification for loss of earning capacity. Considering the infrequency of the decedent's engagement in home cooking services, an informal lending business, this court shall only consider his income from providing beauty services. According to the death certificate submitted by the prosecution, Laude was 26 years old at the time of his death. The amount of damages recoverable for the loss of earning capacity of the deceased is based on 2 factors: the number of years on the basis for which the damages shall be computed, and number 2, the rate of which the losses sustained by the heirs of the deceased should be fixed. The first factor is based on the formula, parenthesis, 2/3 by 80 minus age of the deceased at the time of his death equal life expectancy, which is adopted from the American expectancy table of mortality. Net income is computed by deducting from the amount of the victim's gross income the amount of his living expenses. As there is no proof of Laude's living expenses, the net income is estimated to be 50% of the gross annual income. Thus, the loss of earning capacity of deceased is computed as follows. Net earning capacity represents X equals life expectancy times gross annual income, living expenses, parenthesis 50% of gross annual income, where life expectancy equals 2/3 times parenthesis 80 minus age of deceased, which is 26 years old. So X is equal to 2/3 times 80 minus 26 times 20,000 times 12 minus 20,000 times 12, which is the 50%. X is equal to 2/3 times 54 times 240,000 minus 120,000 pesos. X is equal to 2/3 by 54 times 120,000 pesos. X is equal to 36 times 120,000 pesos. X is equal to 4,320,000 pesos. The deceased loss of earning capacity would then be 4,320,000 pesos. As far as actual damages consisting of wake, burial, and other related expenses are concerned, Marilu Laude testified that her family spent 270,000 pesos for the wake and burial expenses for her brother, Jeffrey Laude. However, as to wake and burial expenses, the court can only award such amount which is supported by proper receipts. The following expenses are the only ones supported with receipts. A. Expenses for autopsy and wake in the total amount of 93,000 pesos. And B. Burial expenses comprised of 50,000 pesos for the memorial lot, 11,500 pesos for interment services, and 750 pesos for the cremation and burial permits. Hence, the court can only award the total amount of 155,250 pesos as funeral and burial expenses, and not the 270,000 pesos being claimed by Laude's sister, Marilu Laude. For the pain and her family felt for the loss of his brother, Marilu Laude is asking the court to award them not less than 100 million pesos as moral damages. Juanita Cabilan, the mother of the deceased, on the other hand, said the grief and pain she felt is unquantifiable. Moral damages are given to ease the victim's grief and suffering, and are not punitive in nature, and were never intended to enrich the claimant at the expense of the defendant. It is true that the court has the discretion to determine the amount of moral damages that may be awarded to the heirs of the deceased, but it should not be palpably and scandalously excessive. It must be commensurate to the loss of the injury suffered. Accordingly, the court cannot grant the excessive amount of not less than 100 million pesos as prayed for by the heirs of the deceased. The most appropriate amount is 50,000 pesos in accordance with the jurisprudential amount of moral damages in homicide cases. Finally, as a general rule, exemplary damages are only imposed in criminal offenses when the crime was committed with one or more aggravating circumstances, be they generic or qualifying. However, there have been instances wherein exemplary damages were awarded despite the lack of an aggravating circumstance. Recently, in People of the Philippines versus Pepito Niverio, and the people of the Philippines versus Lorenzo Laico Sr., the Supreme Court awarded exemplary damages to set a public example, to serve as deterrent to elders who abuse and corrupt the youth, and to protect the latter from sexual abuse. In this case, the court did not appreciate any aggravating circumstances. However, by analogous application of the Supreme Court's pronouncement, the court deemed it best to award exemplary damages in favor of the heirs of the deceased. The award is given to set a public example, to serve as deterrent to all military and civilian personnel of the United States of America, like the accused, who from time to time may visit the Republic of the Philippines pursuant to the Visiting Forces Agreement, to respect every Filipino citizen, regardless of his/her sexual orientation, and also the laws of the Republic of the Philippines. The exemplary damages being sought by the heirs of the deceased, which is equivalent to not less than 100 million pesos, is denied on the ground that it is excessive and outrageous, and it has no basis at all. Following the prevailing case law on the matter, exemplary damages in the amount of 30,000 pesos is awarded to the heirs of the deceased. The penalty for homicide imposed by Article 249 of the Revised Penal Code is reclusion temporal. Since two mitigating circumstances and no aggravating circumstance have been found to have attended the commission of the offense, the penalty shall be lowered by 1 degree, pursuant to Article 64 of Paragraph 5 of the same code. The penalty of prisión mayor is imposable, considering that the two mitigating circumstances are to be taken into account in reducing the penalty by 1 degree, and no other modifying circumstances were shown to have attended the commission of the offense. Under the indeterminate sentence law, the minimum penalty shall be within the range of that which is next lower in degree, consisting of 6 years of prison correctional as minimum and 12 years of prison mayor as maximum. I request the honor that the accused to stand up for the dispositive portion now. The accused lang po. Wherefore, judgment is rendered, finding accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton guilty beyond reasonable doubt of the crime of homicide, and sentencing him to suffer the indeterminate sentence of 6 years of prison correctional as minimum and 12 years of prison mayor as maximum, with full credit for the period of his preventive imprisonment pursuant to Article 29, Revised Penal Code, and ordering him to pay to the heirs of the late Jeffrey S. Laude, represented by Julita Cabilan, as follows: A. 50,000 pesos as civil indemnity, 4,320,000 pesos as damages for loss of earning capacity, 155,250 pesos as reimbursement for the wake, burial, and other related expenses as actual damages, and B. 50,000 pesos as moral damages, and E. 30,000 pesos as exemplary damages. Article 5, Section 10 of the Visiting Forces Agreement, entered into by the Philippines and the United States, provides the confinement or detention by Philippine authorities of United States personnel shall be carried out in facilities agreed on by appropriate Philippine and United States authorities. In the exchange of diplomatic notes between the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Embassy of the United States of America, the Philippines and the United States entered into an agreement as to the facility for the confinement or detention of accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton. Under Diplomatic Note number 2332 of the United States Embassy dated November 12, 2015, the pertinent portion of which states, in response to the Government of the Philippines Diplomatic Note 12-0262 of February 6, 2012, and in furtherance of the reply of the Embassy of the United States in Diplomatic Note 0282 of February 24, 2012, the Embassy of the United States of America has the honor to confirm with the Department of Foreign Affairs that the confinement or detention by Philippine authorities of Lance Corporal Pemberton, should it be necessary, may be carried out at the Armed Forces of the Philippines Custodial Detention Center located in Camp Aguinaldo, Quezon City, or other suitable facilities as mutually agreed, subject to agreement on operational and administrative arrangements for said confinement or detention, including compliance with mutually acceptable standards. Emphasis supplied. The agreement entered into by the United States of America and Philippine authorities as to the facility for the confinement or detention of Lance Corporal Pemberton is ambiguous. It failed to state the specific facility where accused Lance Corporal Pemberton will serve his sentence, and the particular Philippine authority, government agency which will have supervision over the confinement of Lance Corporal Pemberton while he is serving his sentence. It bears emphasizing that the confinement or detention must be by Philippine authorities, and it shall be carried out in facilities agreed on by appropriate Philippine and United States authorities. If the confinement or detention of accused Pemberton should be by Philippine authorities as provided in the Visiting Forces Agreement, then he should be confined or detained in the New Bilibid prison or in the facilities where national prisoners of the Republic of the Philippines are confined or detained under the Bureau of Corrections. The Bureau of Corrections is the agency under the Department of Justice that is charged with the custody and rehabilitation of national prisoners. It is provided under Presidential Decree number 29 that prisoners sentenced to more than 3 years and 1 day and above are classified as national prisoners. Since accused Lance Corporal Pemberton is sentenced to suffer the indeterminate sentence of 6 years of prison correctional as minimum and 12 years of prison major as maximum, he is considered as national prisoner. Pursuant to OCA Circular number 40-2013, quoted, all trial judges concerned are hereby directed to strictly comply with OCA Circular number 4-92-A and issue the corresponding mitimus or commitment order of national prisoners immediately after their conviction, so that they may be remitted or transferred to the New Bilibid prison of the Bucor. It is also provided under OCA Circular number 63-97, dated October 6, 1997. National prisoners may also be committed to national penal institutions other than the New Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa City, such as number 1, national prisoners in regions 10 and 11 to be committed to the Davao Prison and Penal Farm at Panabo, Davao del Norte. Number 2, national prisoners in regions 9 and 12 to be committed to the San Ramon Prison and Penal Farm at Zamboanga City, Zamboanga del Sur. Number 3, national prisoners in Region 8 to be committed to the Leyte Regional Prison at Tabuyog, Leyte. Number 4, national prisoners in Palawan and Puerto Princesa City to be committed to the Iwahig Prison and Penal Farm at Puerto Princesa City, Palawan. And number 5, national prisoners in Mindoro Oriental and Mindoro Occidental to be committed to the Sablayan Prison and Penal Farm at Sablayan, Mindoro Occidental. Pending clarification of the agreement, accused Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton is hereby temporarily committed to the New Bilibid Prison, Bureau of Corrections, Muntinlupa City. So ordered, Olongapo City, Philippines, 18 November 2015, signed Rolin M. Hines Habalde, presiding judge.
Will be issuing the order of the promulgation of the Philippines.
All rise please, court session adjourns. Sheriff.
Bakit pinag-join nyo agad? Standby for a while. Standby for a while.
Ayaw sumagot siya. Definitive.